What's good, everyone? This your main correspondent, Alan Taylor, and I'm back in the broadcast room yet again, always with another one. And yes, indeed, it is another one. So this is where we at. Apparently, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has, came out and basically got on these judges' asses. And this is where we at now. So apparently these judges have been overreaching, going outside their way, trying to stipulate things and put their little 2 cents in on stuff, which is ridiculous, and trying to stop what the actual American people voted for out here.
So what the French toast is there to think about?
Yes. So apparently Mike Johnson has issued a warning and things like that. So we're about to go here now and dive off into this. We're going to recap, and then we're going to dive off into what Mike Johnson had to say. Let's go here now. Quarters, nickels, and dimes, people.
A contentious appeals court hearing on Monday over the Trump administration's deportation of Venezuelan migrants came to a head when a judge said that Nazis were given more rights to contest their removal from the U.S. during World War II. Government lawyers relied on a little-used 18th century law called the Alien Enemies Act to remove the migrants. U.S. Circuit Court Judge Patricia Millett, an Obama appointee, said, quote, Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemies Act than has happened here. To which government lawyer Drew Ensign responded, we certainly dispute the Nazi analogy. The Trump administration was asking the appeals court to halt a lower court's 2-week ban on the use of the obscure law to justify deporting alleged Tren de Aragua members without final removal orders from immigration judges. Prior to the Trump administration's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, the law had been used just 3 times in U.S. history. Most recently to intern and remove Japanese, German, and Italian immigrants during World War II. Millett is one of 3 judges on a panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit hearing the government's case. The judges did not indicate when they would issue a ruling.
Okay, so my thing of this is the reason why are these judges trying so hard to keep these people here? Now, I get it. I understand. Low key, it's probably about the money. I always follow the money. It has to be some incentive for these judges to, well, we got to do this. They got to have these right stuff. That's the reason why Trump invoked the act of the 1700. Listen, look, man, these people have to get out of here. And, they've been brought in through these fake programs that the Democratic Party in this previous administration just came up with magically out the blue, the C program, stuff like that, where they could come over here and be, unregistered, technically unregistered citizens or man, it's not right. And when we as Americans vote for something collectively, the way that it went down, these people are to acknowledge that. These judges and things like that, these Congress people, politicians, stuff like that, they need to know that this is how it's going down. All right, so we're about to go here now, and we're about to keep going. Let's do this.
I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington, where the lawsuits are piling up. 65 days in office, and President Trump is facing at least 137 legal challenges to his actions. Now a face-off between those accusing the White House of massive overreach and those who say, quote, activist judges are standing in the way of the president's priorities.
I'm going to sign this one.
In response to the abundance of executive orders signed by President Donald Trump in just 2 months, an abundance of lawsuits challenging what he views as his presidential power. In many cases, they're filed by Democrats with federal judges they see as like-minded, a practice that's been used by both parties.
Activist judges are a serious threat to our system. It has increased in number. It has increased in intensity. This is not the way the system is supposed to work.
The system now being challenged in new legislation called No Rogue Rulings Act, which seeks to limit the authority of federal judges to impose nationwide injunctions.
Congress is saying when a federal judge issues an injunction that covers the whole country, that's too broad a power for one judge to have. A judge should only have the power where the state that he is located in.
Right. That makes sense to me. Listen, look, a judge in California shouldn't stipulate what happens in Atlanta. A judge in California, in this particular case right here, and we're talking about getting these dangerous criminals and individuals up out of our country. I don't understand why these so-called natural citizen judges that are appointed by, you know, the people to be in these positions and things like that are trying to go out of their way, you know, to stop the excommunication of these illegals. These people are illegal technically. I don't care what type of fictitious program that the previous administration came up with to get these people over here. These people are here illegally. They did not go through the proper vetting processes to get them over here legally with what we had in place in the first place.
Lawsuits include challenges to the widespread firing of federal workers and dismantling of agencies created by Congress, the blocking of Trump's executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship, and his use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport 261 migrants he calls criminals without due process, which critics say interferes with U.S. national security.
The Constitution gives the president the power to make the judgments about how we deal with foreign nationals when we are animated by national security concerns.
Right. Basically. And if he wants, and if he knows, and Tom Homan and all this, if they have the information on these individuals, that these people are a part of these illustrious gangs that come from other countries and stuff like that, we got to get these people up out of here. They've already done enough damage.
It's his call, not a district court judge's call.
Right.
Others argue there is a valid reason for the long list of lawsuits, that Trump has time and time again pushed the limits of presidential power.
On the 250th anniversary of our overthrow of a king, Congress needs to step in and say that the presidency has become too powerful. We've got to look at the abuse of emergency authorities, the abuse of tariff authorities, the abuse of domestic law enforcement authorities.
President Donald Trump laying bare the reality.
Okay, so where was all this abuse of power when Biden came up with this app to allow all these illegals in without going through the proper channels of our port authorities? Not port authorities, but you know what I'm saying, our immigration system that was already in place. Yes. Okay, fine. Yeah, it may take a year or two or some things like that for them to get over here. That's the whole purpose of the vetting, is to allow time to pass to make sure that these people deserve to be here, not just rushing a bunch of people over here. Where was that action then now? Where was it? Where were these judges and stuff like that would, you know, well, the Republican judges and stuff like that? They didn't put all these injunctions on fucking Biden and shit out there, where he was bringing all these people in illegally. I'm low key. They may should have. The Republican judges should have started giving them injunctions like they're trying to do Trump.
That democracy can be messy, raising questions about the Constitution and our laws nearly every day. Constitutional experts say the answers to many of them will end up being determined by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right. It has got to go to the Supreme Court at this point. And, you know, this is where we at. All right. So we're going to keep going because we got to hear what the Speaker of the House has to say and things like that. Let's go here now. Let's see what the Speaker of the House had to say. Quarters, nickels, and dimes, people.
Something is happening right now that has not happened before. In the last 100 years, listen to this, 67% of the injunctions issued against a president were issued against one president alone, and that's Donald J. Trump. 67% of the injunctions over the last 100 years. Okay, that's a problem. 92% of those were issued by judges who were known or accused of being partisan, you know, Democrat appointees to the court. So that something that unusual is happening, something that is out of the norm. It is a dangerous trend, and it violates equal justice under law, that critical principle. It violates our system itself. It violates separation of powers when a judge thinks that they can enjoin something that a president is doing that the American people voted for. That is not what the founders intended. So there's a natural tension between the branches of the government, and we're working through that. The Judiciary Committee is looking at alternatives. One of the bills that I really like that's already been through committee was authored by Representative Darrell Issa, and that would limit the scope of federal injunctions, the ability of one individual judge to abuse the system in this way. And it would be, in my view, a dramatic improvement on that. So we'll be moving, I think, that piece of legislation and some others to address it, because we have an Article I authority under the Constitution to do that. We do have authority over the federal courts, as you know. we can eliminate an entire district court. We have power funding over the courts and all these other things. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and Congress is going to act. So stay tuned for that. Thank you.
Yo, shout out to the speaker.
French toast is there to think about.
He just told y'all what the biz is. Yes, they do have the power to sit these judges down. And it's coming to this point right now to where, you know, what the American people overwhelmingly voted for, Trump has been doing. That's why his approval rates are high, Democrats are low, and they're sitting around here being bats all day. And they're mad and they're pissed off because Elon's finding all this under the table money from Switzerland accounts. Don't quote me on the Switzerland accounts. I'm just joking a little bit, okay? But I'm just being honest here. Yes. And this is the problem here. They're mad because the system of money and exchanging funds through all these agencies and these programs and these supposed to be humanitarian programs, stuff like that, they're getting found out. And yes, people are hot about this money, man. Follow the money. People get mad when money get low, especially when they're used to getting it for free. All right, but this is where we at. And these judges are overstepping their boundaries, and they need to be put down. Seriously. So, okay, we're going to keep going. Here we go here now. Let's do this.
Let's start here with House Speaker Mike Johnson also issuing an open threat to the federal judiciary today. Johnson saying that Congress has the authority to pull funding to federal courts. The congressman also adding that he is open to the idea here of potentially impeaching judges who rule against the president, saying that, quote, everything is on the table. Well,
Right.
This comes as the White House faces high-stakes legal battles over the deportation of alleged Venezuelan gang members and an executive order banning transgender service members from the military. So I want to bring back Jay, who, of course, is on the Hill alongside ABC News investigative reporter Olivia Rubin, who's with us now as well. And so first of all, Jay, what more do we know here about Speaker Johnson's comments? And what are you hearing from lawmakers on the Hill? Because I think the real question here is there weight behind this threat?
So Johnson's gotten some pressure from lawmakers in his own party to be open to impeaching federal judges who rule against President Trump. But he didn't go that far today. Instead, he made this veiled threat where he said Congress is in charge of the budgets of these various courts. They're in charge of the drawing and makeup of these federal court districts where these district court judges preside. He's also thrown his weight behind this legislation from Darrell Issa of California to try to rein in how broad an injunction can be. You remember injunctions because every time there's some executive order from President Trump, and the same goes for the Biden administration with conservative judges, a judge would block that executive order from going into effect while a broader court case plays out. Darrell Issa's bill wants to try to rein in that power. Mike Johnson has said Republicans are going to put it on the floor next week for a vote. But he's not going the full length, Kana, that some in his party, chief among them Elon Musk, have called on him to do, which is open up the floodgates of this impeachment proceeding of federal judges who rule against President Trump. We know Elon Musk has backed House Republicans who get behind impeaching federal judges, but Mike Johnson not going that far today.
And Olivia, what do we know about these cases that we talked about, right? There's these court cases.
Well, I definitely get it. You know what I'm saying? He has to listen, look, Mike Johnson has to, move strategically. And I get that. He can't just, outright say that he's going to impeach right now, because they're still figuring things out. They're still maneuvering. So yes, the just blurting it out. Okay, we're gonna just go straight to impeaching. No. I get it. We have to play the game. But the thing of this is he gave the subtle warning that yes, Congress can actually affect what's going on with you guys. Now, you're doing too much. You're providing too many injunctions on one president out of a damn 100 years. This is wild. Out of 100 years? Come on, man. Oh, Jesus.
Cases that are playing out against the Trump administration, specifically the battle over deportation flights, as well as that executive order that bans trans service members from the military. What's the latest on both of those cases, Olivia?
Well, the Trump administration taking a step that we had expected them to take in the deportation case, which is invoking the state secret privilege. Essentially, they're saying that the judge who is asking for more information about those flights to determine if the Trump administration disobeyed his order to turn the flights around, they're saying this information is so sensitive that if we disclosed it to you, it would compromise national security. And the government using affidavits from Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, Attorney General Pam Bondi, Secretary of State Mark Rubio, all to back this claim that it is too sensitive to give the judge more information. And really what the judge just wants is, where did those flights land? What time did they take off? How many people were on those flights?
And obviously that's too sensitive. Listen, look, one thing we need to understand in this country, that when they slap the seal of national security on things, it stops a lot of stuff. I don't care whether people like this or not. It's just the truth. When they slap national security on things in this country, it stops everything. Judges, lawyers, sometimes even doctors out here. And this is just the case. And we know that definitely in this country, if a doctor says certain things, it'll overrule a judge. If a doctor says, no, this and that, woo the woo, and it'll overrule a judge. But the thing of this is, when national security comes into place, it's national security. It's a huge problem.
And what's so critical here, Kana, is that much of that information is already public. You can publicly track the flights. The administration put out and helped publish produced videos of these men being deported. So there are some questions here about, what really they're trying to hide when much of this information is out there. But Kristi Noem, the DHS secretary, saying that confirming any of that information would cause harm. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that disclosing it would prevent foreign governments from wanting to partner with the United States anymore if they know that this information can be disclosed to a judge. But what's key here, Kana, is that the judge now has to look at the information that's being provided and determine if they've sufficiently claimed that this information is guarded. And we haven't gotten that determination from Judge Boasberg yet. That's a big one that's coming. Really quickly, because you asked about the transgender case as well. Of course, there is a ban that's already in place on that executive order that a judge in Washington, D.C. put into place. The Trump administration and Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, is appealing that. But there are other cases playing out, specifically one out west today before a judge. It doesn't seem like there's a ruling in that case today, but based on a press conference afterward, the attorney representing some of those, the plaintiffs, some of those people who are suing, saying that they believe that this executive order, of course, which bans transgender military members, could affect thousands of people. Kana.
Certainly watching both of those closely.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying? Listen, look. Definitely on the situation with Speaker of the House is, pretty much letting these judges know that at the end of the day, you have a huge issue here. You have a huge problem. And it's not going to be tolerated and things like that, because this situation needs to be handled. The people overwhelmingly voted to get these illegals up out of here, to get these individuals that have been doing hurt, harm, and danger to American citizens up out of here. And now these judges are wanting to come in round and oh my goodness, they don't have due process and stuff like that. These people are heinous criminals. Now, in some cases, like Tom Homan said at one point, if you have a heinous criminal hanging around another technically illegal in this country, but they're not a criminal, then yeah, they're going to get swept up under the rug. That's kind of how that happens. If I go to visit some old friends in the trap house and things like that, and I'm knowing that, it's the trap house, I go there and I visit an old friend, I'm sitting around stuff like that, and they happen to get raided that day, I'm going to be taken down too. They're not going to sit there and say, oh, well, no, he's not this and that, woo to woo, and let's separate him and where he's free to go. No, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They're going to take me down to just like everybody else because I'm in the vicinity. They're not going to worry about who's innocent and who's guilty at that moment. That's not what the police do. That shit's for the judges and the legal system. But, it is what it is at this point. It's a sad situation to where we have these treasonous judges out here trying to, stop what the American people overwhelmingly voted for. And it's just it's just a situation. And it's tiresome and it's disrespectful to the constituents and the people of this nation that actually voted for this situation. But it is what it is, though. Shout out to all my subscribers. Mad love to y'all. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like, share, subscribe button. Make sure you ring that bell to be notified whenever I decide to post things. And like I always say,
and that, my friends, is the bottom line.
That, my friends, is the bottom line.